Alright guys, it's time for me to come clean. I can't keep the secret any longer. If you go back to our prior videos, you'll see that we started all of our seeds for the garden indoors this year. It was a really large project. We had to do a lot of research to figure out when to start them, what kind of varieties we wanted to plant, and then most importantly, we had to research the equipment we needed to do all of this and to kind of systematize the process. I'm happy to report it worked extremely well. We started a couple hundred starts indoors, but when we transplanted everything out to the garden, I sort of felt like an empty nester. I had so much fun growing everything. I loved coming downstairs in the morning and seeing all of my starts. I was just so sad to see it all go to the garden, so I started scratching my head. What else can I grow? Sometime over the winter in all of my research, I stumbled on the idea of microgreens. Microgreens seem to be somewhat of a fad right now. If you don't know what they are, many of you are familiar with sprouts and baby greens. So a sprout is when you moisten seeds, or I know a lot of people do lentil sprouts. They'll put lentils in like a mason jar, they get them wet a couple times a day and then filter them out. And that starts the germination process and they sprout. And then baby greens are like adult greens that are harvested when they're really young. So they're maybe about 4 inches tall. It's what they sell in a lot of salad mixes. And a microgreen is somewhere in between. Yada, yada, yada. Anyways, why would anyone care? Well, for one, they can be grown indoors year-round in a really tiny space like what we got over there. We don't always have access to lettuce because we have a really short growing season. We don't have anything like a greenhouse, but we thought that microgreens would be the perfect way to just add a little more greens to our diet year-round, especially in winter when we can't eat out of the garden fresh. Based on that fact alone, I was pretty much sold. Except then, I learned that microgreens are much more nutrient dense than their mature counterparts. And what that means is per, say, half a cup of microgreens compared to half a cup of adult plants, it's about 9 times as nutrient dense. I read that on the internet, so it must be true. Although some studies say that maybe that's not true after all. Either way, we're basically growing greens year-round in our garage. How cool is that? So this is a mix of, I think there's kale in here, cabbage, arugula, which gives it just a really delicious flavor and smell, calabri, not sure if that's how you pronounce that. And we could easily go through one of these babies in a week. I think what I love about microgreens over, say, just mature plants is that they seem to be much more versatile. Salad greens is really the best in salad. And I don't know about you, but we don't eat salad 7 days of the week. But microgreens, I don't know if it's a texture thing or a flavor thing, but you can pretty much add them to anything. So we've been adding them to our eggs and our omelets every single morning. They're really great over roasted vegetables, roasted meat. You could toss them in your soups. Some actually refer to this as vegetable confetti, and I couldn't agree more. When researching what we wanted to do for our seed starting setup, we knew that we wanted to invest in things that we could use year after year. We didn't want to go the disposable route because that just seems wasteful. And in our research, we discovered that a lot of people use what are called 10-20 trays. These are what's standard in the industry. And you'll find that most seed starting type stuff revolves around this common size. Our rack here fits 5, 10, 20 trays perfectly. But you can get these types of inserts. I don't know if these are specifically for microgreens, but they have drainage holes in them. So basically what you can do is you can put your water in here, you put your microgreens in, and it actually waters from below. Or if you choose to water from above, then the 10-20 tray will catch all the water. So backing up, you're telling me that I can grow 5 whole trays of microgreens at once with stuff I already have. I was curious, with 1 tray, how many microgreens are we gonna get? Is that gonna sustain us, or is that like nothing at all? So it turns out when you harvest just one 10-20 tray, you get about 3 cups packed. And depending on who you are, that could last quite a while. Every mix is a little bit different, or every seed is a little bit different to my understanding, but this mix we have here, it germinates in 24 hours, and then in 10 days, we can harvest our little hearts out. Not only that, but I thought, if we're growing microgreens for us, we might be able to grow them for other people. It's just something nice to share. I've never received microgreens as a gift, so I thought if we get some little baggies, I know people would probably love to get their hands on these. And that's exactly what we've done. If we are growing 5 trays at a time, we can't possibly eat them all. I wanted to show you guys just how easy it is to grow all the microgreens you could possibly eat yourself. So I thought it'd be fun to grow not just one type, but 5 types of microgreens. You don't have to buy microgreen seeds specifically. These are labeled as microgreen seeds. They're not different seeds. They're just packaged this way, I guess. There is information on the internet where to get these seeds for a cost-effective price. We didn't worry about that too much just for our case study. Here are the microgreens we decided on. Basil, cilantro, a mild microgreen mix, a spicy microgreen mix, and then this is another mild mix that we bought off Amazon. I'll go ahead and link to this guy in the description of this video because we've been really liking it so far. Why just grow one type of microgreen when you could get a mix and you don't have to think so much or manage all these different types of seeds? So this basic salad mix has really been little to no maintenance. Basically, I plant them, I give them some water if their soil's too dry, and that's about it. But apparently there are seeds that are a little more challenging to grow. So if you're looking to start with microgreens, I'd start with things that are easier to grow. Wanna help me plant these real quick?
Yeah, let's do it.
Sweet. Do you wanna grab the soil cup? It's a cup full of soil. Originally I was using a seed starting mix instead of actual soil, but I ran out. So now we're using soil. But you could use compost soil. It really doesn't have to be anything special, which is awesome. So I probably fill this about maybe halfway full. But yeah, I was thinking to make this even better, put like a bunch of soil in the garage.
Oh yeah.
That way I don't have to come out here.
Oh, you don't want to come out here in the rain?
I mean, I love coming out here, but you know, it's doing this 5 times.
Well, and this is a very quick process, so you're doing it all the time, right? More?
That's pretty good, yeah. And then bring a cup in with us.
Okay.
And then we're gonna put that on top of the seeds.
Okay.
So those 10-20 trays, you can get humidity domes for them too. That just means you have to water less often. We find these work really well. You can control how much humidity comes and goes. So we open these just a tiny bit, but it'll stay moist until we take the cover off for, you know, a couple of days or as long as it takes them to germinate.
there any microgreen ones?
No. Thanksgiving's probably the closest. Well, there you have it. This is the mix, the mild mix off Amazon that I started with. These are the mixes from Johnny's, the spicy and the mild. And then these are the basil and the cilantro. And it was my guess that these weren't gonna do as good as the mixes. I think that's just because these seeds are a little bit more temperamental. It looks like the basil did germinate, but they're kind of growing at inconsistent rates, and it's kind of like a ground cover, even though the lights were hung at the same distances. And the cilantro, it doesn't even look like everything germinated, but what did germinate is definitely a little on the leggy side. So I'm not really blown away by this. Doesn't mean that I won't try again in the future though. I know you guys have seen some videos about how people are making thousands of dollars a month growing microgreens in their garage or their basement. This is not a how-to video on how to quit your day job, but what I am hoping for is that this opens up your mind a little bit to what you can do with space and supplies and materials that you already have and skills that you already have. Just as an example, most people can fit a couple of racks in their house or their garage and can probably grow up to 30 trays of microgreens, no problem, so long as they have water, which most people have, and electricity, which most people have. Once you establish you have those things, it's really a matter of optimizing and figuring out how to make such an activity profitable. I think what's great is that anyone can do this, and I think this is even a really great activity for kids. And it doesn't have to be microgreens. We know kids in our area that sell eggs, sell vegetables, jam, soap, you name it, and so many people, so many of our friends have little, I'll call them side businesses, but basically they produce something out of their household that creates value. Jesse had a really good kind of visual to help you understand what I'm talking about.
So in my imagination, the house of the 20s, I say the house, what I mean is the property of the 20s, it actually was a net export business model. Everything about their land produced something. It had a very modest house, which was adequate, and everything else about the land produced something for somebody. So first of all, they usually had land big enough to do some of this stuff, partly because it was affordable, but they had some timberland where they could grow some trees which could be used to build things. So they generated lumber and they generated firewood, which they used to heat their modest house. So their house wasn't massive, it didn't have a huge energy footprint. So a small amount of timber was enough to build it and to heat it, so they didn't have to pay for all that stuff. Then they had their pasture land, which they could use to feed their livestock, which they used to produce meat that they ate, and they also sold. Or
sell their hay or whatever.
Or they could simply grow hay or some sort of a crop. And they probably produced their own milk. And they very likely had their own chickens or some other meat source for eggs and for meat. So they produced something with that. They had a garden to produce vegetables. And then they had some fruit trees that produced something, maybe vines or grapes or fruit, depending on what grew in their region. And then they had a very small dirt driveway. So fast forward to the home and the property of the future. Here's a 100 by 50 foot lot. We've got a very nice driveway over here made of concrete. Doesn't produce anything, doesn't produce food. You can't eat it, it doesn't heat you. You can't sell it, it's just concrete. But boy, is their car clean. Got a beautiful, well-trimmed, well-manicured green lawn. You can't eat the grass, but it does cost money to grow. You got to mow it. It takes water, fertilizer, weed. You got to buy all that stuff because you can't produce any of that stuff here. So, but it's lush, and your neighbors are super jelly of your beautifully well-trimmed, high-cost lawn. houses are ginormous with only 10 feet on this side, 10 feet on this side, and maybe 15 to 20 feet in the back, just enough for a pool and a fence and a patio to put your barbecue on that you can't produce the heat
pool,
for.
which costs money to clean and maintain.
Yeah, then you got a beautiful pool. That's nice. That's great.
And then, your backyard that you don't grow any food in.
Yeah, there's no production here. There's nowhere to produce anything on either side. I mean, it's just...
You're not making money out of your big house. You're not renting a room out. You're not doing anything in your garage.
And it's a lot of money to heat or air condition these things because they're massive houses, even though 2 people on average live in the modern house. So basically the net production of a modern piece of land is 0. It's a net import, and it's a loss. Everything about these properties costs money. Money to build, money to maintain, money to heat, money to keep clean.
Not to mention your TV bill.
Yep, internet,
and
television.
Your internet bill.
So if you can just use 1 square foot, let's say this project Alyssa worked on took 3 square feet. So let's say this is a 3,000 square foot house. So if you use about that much of your house to produce something, you have broken the mold of the modern household, and you're an inch closer to the average household of the 20s.
So point is, try to do something, anything for crying out loud, to produce value in your household. It doesn't have to be microgreens. There's so many options out there. But if you can just clear 3 square feet in your garage that you're probably just using as a storage unit, just think of the options that could be opened up for you. And I think it's not about being profitable right out of the gate, but it's about trying different things. It's about having a certain mindset, and over time, maybe you'll find 1 or 2 things that works really well for you. For example, we're making wine in our garage. We're canning. We're not planning on selling those things, but we could if push came to shove. And if you're interested in trying to grow microgreens, if I would have started with basil and cilantro, I probably would feel like a failure, but because I started with something really, really easy that you clearly can't really fail, because otherwise I would have failed, it really encouraged me to keep going, and I think it gave me a boost of confidence that this is something I could do. If you end up selling it, great, but even if you don't, it's a really healthy addition to your diet. It's something you don't have to buy in the store. It's something you can't buy in the store. And it pushes you just 1 step closer towards being more self-sufficient if that's what you're going after.